A perfectly carved vertical hole hidden deep in the North Caucasus Mountains drops into the Earth like someone drilled straight toward the planet's core. Some people even compare the shaft to internal passages inside the Egyptian pyramids. Could there really be a connection between them? So the public learned about this mystery cave thanks to a local cave enthusiast who was hiking in the North Caucasus in 2011. The rugged slopes of the Kara Hora mountain, with glacier-carved valleys and cliffs that have stood there against all sorts of weather for thousands of years, seem to be a perfect place if you want to hide something. And that's where Shemakov found something that looked like an entrance to an underground cave. He invited a team of cavers, and together they went down the shaft. At first, they were sure it was a geological formation, but the deeper they descended, the more it looked like something carefully built by humans. There were massive stone blocks that seemed fitted together so tightly that you couldn't push a knife blade between them. Some sources also say the shaft drops almost perfectly vertical, and its walls look polished, as if giant machinery smoothed them long before modern tools existed. But in reality, this smooth appearance results from natural geological fractures. What's really weird are openings resembling ventilation channels. These passages seem designed to move air through the structure. Natural caves rarely organize airflow this cleanly. That detail alone makes researchers argue whether someone designed and built all this intentionally. And if someone did build it on purpose, it would have to be one really advanced civilization. Some people said Shemakov described his discovery in every detail in his diary. But even if it really existed, it was lost. So we'll never know what was in it. In fact, we know so little about this man, and his discovery wasn't mentioned a lot on TV or elsewhere, that some people even questioned if he existed at all. Or maybe he saw something down there he shouldn't have seen. And there's no way to double-check, as he was hit by a car and passed away just 4 years after the discovery. This tragedy fueled even more rumors, speculation, and conspiracy theories. Geologists are trying to find a more logical explanation for this shaft, of course. The Caucasus Mountains are part of a massive chain called the Alpida Belt, which stretches all the way from southeastern Europe right into Asia. The Caucasus formed as a result of a tectonic plate collision. All these massive plates are still restless and constantly pushing against each other today. So the entire region gets hit with strong earthquakes on a regular basis. Plus, water, pressure, and chemical reactions can carve vertical shafts over millions of years. Underground rivers dissolve softer rock, and harder layers remain smooth, eventually forming deep chimneys. But erosion usually creates randomness, and Kara Hora has symmetry, angles, and fitted stone features that resemble architecture more than accident. Now, getting inside the shaft is still extremely dangerous. You'd have to face sheer drops, unstable ledges, and oxygen levels that thin out deeper underground. Twisting tunnels make it super tricky to find your way, and locals warn that some of the first explorers who entered never returned. Luckily, modern teams can use ground-penetrating radar and remote sensors instead of human descent to study the shaft. With every new scan, researchers find more voids that are still unreachable. Meanwhile, Kara Hora has interesting neighbors. For example, Verovkina Cave, currently the second deepest known cave on the planet. This monster drops nearly 1.5 miles straight down, deeper than 4 Empire State Buildings stacked end-to-end. Explorers descend through freezing waterfalls, razor-sharp rock corridors, and vertical pits that swallow light completely. Temperatures here hover just above freezing, and underground rivers roar through darkness nobody saw until recently. If you dare reach the bottom, prepare for a journey that will last weeks of staged camps, ropes stretching thousands of feet, and absolute trust in teammates. One mistake down there means you'll be gone for good. Veryovkina constantly floods and reshapes itself year after year, so cavers have to deal with flood pulses all the time. Water cuts deeper into the limestone rock and expands chambers slowly but surely, and then, because of the volume, suddenly bursts through cave openings. But this doesn't stop scientists from going down there to measure oxygen, airflow, and mineral growth to understand how caves evolve over geologic time. and that's how explorers discover strange microbial life that somehow survives without sunlight and feeds on minerals instead of plants. These ecosystems resemble conditions scientists expect beneath icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. This means the cave could be a great training ground for future space exploration. But before we head to space, let's check out another super interesting cave system, this time in northern Spain. There's a chamber there which scientists call Pit of Bones. Explorers have to trek into a pitch-black underground maze to squeeze through a narrow shaft that suddenly drops straight down for 42 feet. At the bottom of that geological trap, you slide down a steep stone ramp into a cramped, muddy chamber that holds the largest and oldest collection of early human fossils ever discovered. It's a biological time capsule with the remains of at least 28 ancient humans, frozen long before modern history even began. Explorers also found over 6,500 fossil fragments mixed with the remains of at least 166 Ice Age cave bears, lions, wolves, and foxes that probably fell down the shaft by accident. But the human bones are a massive mystery because they seem to have ended up down there much earlier than the animals. Who these people actually were is still a huge debate. When researchers looked closer at their skulls and jaws, they noticed strong, super-early Neanderthal traits. Then things got even crazier when scientists miraculously extracted mitochondrial DNA from those ancient bones. It linked these individuals not only to early Neanderthals, but also to the Denisovans, a mysterious group of ancient humans found thousands of miles away in Siberia. It proves our ancestors were moving and mixing in ways far more complicated than anyone ever guessed. The drama doesn't stop at genetics, though. This dark cave might actually hold the world's first assassination mystery and its earliest funeral. Out of thousands of bones, archaeologists found absolutely no everyday tools or food waste, except for a single, carefully crafted quartzite hand axe they nicknamed Excalibur. Because of this, some researchers think the group intentionally lowered their deceased down the shaft with the axe as a ritual. It was probably a way to show compassion hundreds of thousands of years before we thought possible. At the same time, one of the skulls shows two identical lethal fractures that look exactly like intentional blows. To get the exact timeline for all this prehistoric drama, scientists use cutting-edge tech like electron spin resonance and uranium series dating, and finally locked down that is 430,000 years old. Now, let's jump across the world to another geological giant, Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The formation shoots nearly 900 feet above the surrounding land. Its surface has long vertical columns, and it looks like some careful hands carved them. But geologists explain the structure formed when molten rock pushed upwards underground and cooled slowly. As the rock cooled, it turned into hexagonal columns, similar to how drying mud splits into patterns, just scaled up to impossible size. Erosion later removed the softer surrounding rock and left the hardened core unprotected. Local tribes thought the tower was sacred and made up stories about giant bears clawing the stone during mythical hunts. Now, scientists agree on much of its volcanic origin, but debates continue about whether magma ever reached the surface or hardened entirely underground. Even after more than a century of study, Devil's Tower still has its mysteries. When you connect all these places, engineered shafts, endless caves, and underground ecosystem, one thing becomes clear. Earth hides entire worlds beneath our feet, and we've barely scratched the surface.
We all know about the Great Wall of China, but what about a massive Indian wall that was created from thorny shrubs and brushwood? This wall ran through the heart of India. It was smaller than the famous Chinese wall, but still extremely long and impressive. Why did we hear nothing about it, and why did it disappear? Let's figure it out. So, it all began in the 19th century. The British Empire decided to create a large barrier along a customs line right in the heart of India. This line stretched from the state of Punjab in the northwest to Madhya Pradesh. But what was the problem with this line? In India, salt was one of the most expensive products in the country, and the tax on it was very high. People didn't want to pay these taxes, so many smugglers transported salt from coastal areas to central regions. As a result, salt lost its value, and Britain incurred significant financial losses. That's why the idea of creating a living hedge to stop smuggling appeared. The point was not to waste time and effort building a stone wall, but instead to create a barrier made of trees, plants, and dense thorny shrubs. A barrier that could grow on its own. The idea of building a living hedge only seems simple. In reality, the builders faced enormous difficulties. At first, it was built mainly from dry branches that were brought in and piled into tall heaps, but such a wall quickly fell apart and the branches had to be replaced again and again. Then, a government official and botanist named Alan Octavian Hume was appointed Commissioner of Customs. He decided to use his knowledge of gardening and botany to strengthen the hedge. Which trees were better suited for dry soil and which for wetter areas? How could the most resilient species of shrubs be grown? How to destroy parasites and how to thicken the wall so that no one could pass through it. Alan Octavian Hume had to solve these and many other questions. That is why he is credited with the greatest contribution to the creation of this project. People used various Indian trees and shrubs, including dwarf plum trees and bamboo, as well as many local plants. They did not simply pile everything together, but focused on planting and cultivation. Eventually, the length of the hedge exceeded 1,100 miles, which is roughly the distance between New York and Miami. The average height of the barrier was about 8 feet, but in some places it reached 12 feet in height and 14 feet in width. It was guarded by around 12,000 British soldiers stationed along its entire length. The cost of maintaining the wall amounted to approximately $220,716 in today's currency. Of course, this didn't stop the smugglers. Caravans of camels loaded with salt broke through the hedge. Officers often clashed with locals. The wall was destroyed not only by people but also by natural disasters. In some areas, trees don't grow because of the hot, dry climate. In other places, the wall was washed away by floods. In some regions, the soil was simply not fertile enough. They planted again and again, dug trenches, brought ground from other areas, and worked tirelessly until they found the ideal solution for each climatic zone. To create just 1 mile of the wall, builders used about 250 tons of thorny brushwood and other organic material. Each year, people transported around 100,000 tons of plant matter to reinforce weak sections of the hedge. They used almost every type of local thorny shrub. In some areas where the soil was especially dry, the trees couldn't grow. Builders brought in tons of other soil, dug up the top layer, and replanted everything. In addition to this, people faced many problems that interfered with construction. For example, white ants attacked the hedge and destroyed large sections of the wall. Forest fires burned trees for many miles and deprived builders of construction material. Storms, hurricanes, and whirlwinds tore down parts of the wall. Builders had to construct large embankments to protect the wall from floods. One of the most unpleasant challenges was locust invasions. Just imagine millions of flying, buzzing insects swarming the wall and eating all the vegetation. Parasitic vines grew around the trees and simply destroyed them. In one area, rats appeared, and builders brought in a group of wild cats to fight the rodents. All the work to build the hedge took about 30 years. When the wall was completed, it was divided into about 100 sections, each guarded by patrol services. Of course, gaps still remained in the wall. Smugglers broke through it, throwing sacks of salt over the top or climbing the trees within the wall. Officers constantly clashed with them. After such massive and exhausting work, the wall was expected to last a very long time, but in 1879 it was no longer needed. The salt tax began to be collected directly at production sites, making smuggling pointless. Once the wall stopped being maintained, it began to deteriorate and overgrow. In some places, it was dismantled and used for firewood. In other areas, natural disasters finished it off. In modern times, it's almost impossible to find the remains of the hedge. Some sections of it were turned into roads. All the information we know about this fence is stored in the books and records of various researchers who communicated with local people or were directly involved in the process. Now, let's learn something about another, much more famous wall located in China. This wall still remains the largest and most extensive structure ever built by humans. Its length is about 13,000 miles, roughly the distance from Alaska to South America. But it's not just a wall along a straight flat road. It goes up and down, twists and straightens across mountains and plateaus. It's no surprise that this massive construction was built over a span of 2,000 years. The Great Wall of China is divided into many sections and consists of towers, watchpoints, garrison stations, and barracks. All of this was built from bricks and cut stone blocks. To bind them together, builders used lime mortar. But not every part of the wall consists of structures with towers like the ones you see in photos and on the internet. In some areas, it's simply massive ridges of compacted ground. It's hard to imagine how titanic this labor was. All of these construction materials had to be transported into the mountains. People didn't just stack bricks on top of each other. They leveled the ground, reinforced the foundation, and built day after day, year after year, generation after generation. Today, many parts of the Great Wall of China are destroyed. Some elements were ruined by natural disasters, others by erosion, and many sections were destroyed by people. Some of the damage is connected to interesting legends. One of them tells the story of Lady Meng Jiang. Her husband was sent to build the Great Wall of China. For a long time, she received no news from him, so one day she decided to visit him and bring him winter clothes. When she arrived at the wall, she learned that her husband was no longer alive. Lady Meng Jiang wept bitterly in her grief. According to the legend, her sorrowful crying caused part of the wall to collapse. Millions of people built the wall over the course of 2,000 years. And this raises a question. Why? What was the point of all this construction? One of the main reasons was to protect the country from enemies. Essentially, the entire Great Wall of China is a long defensive line. The wall also helped unite and preserve the unity of fragmented states that eventually formed a single China. But what purpose does it serve today? It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It represents a symbol of culture, unity, and the history of the country. And from an economic point of view, it attracts millions of tourists from all over the world. How much time passed between the inventions of the first computer and the appearance of the modern one? The first electronic computer in history is the ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. It was invented in 1945 by American scientists. But there's an older machine. It's the Babbage difference engine. English engineer Charles Babbage built it in 1822. This means more than 200 years have passed since the first computer, and we would have thought so if, at the beginning of the 20th century, divers hadn't discovered a computer more than 2,000 years old. In 1900, a group of divers searched for sea sponges in the Mediterranean Sea between the island of Crete and mainland Greece. But instead of sponges, they found sunken treasure ships. It was one of the most significant archaeological finds of that time. At the bottom were Greek marble sculptures and many other artifacts. Among them, divers found a strange piece of stone the size of a large book. They ignored it and put it with other finds in the museum. A few months later, archaeologists began to study the block and discovered that a strange object with bronze gears was hidden inside it. This shocked all scientists because, according to historical data, such things could not exist in ancient Greece. The technologies of that time were not so developed. Scientists started studying this object and realized they had no idea what it was. They called it the Antikythera mechanism, and they had been trying to unravel its purpose for over 100 years. The fragility of the object added complexity. It had been underwater for a millennia. Its internal instruments were damaged, and when scientists touched them, they fell apart. Over many years of research, the object has split into 82 fragments, becoming a real puzzle for scientists worldwide. They found out that it was a machine designed for astronomical calculations. With the help of X-rays, computer tomography, and virtual modeling, people could partially recreate the image of the mechanism. It was a complex structure consisting of 30 rotating gears that turned the dial. The whole mechanism was set in motion with a hand crank. All this was necessary for the ancient Greeks to track the positions of the moon and the sun and calculate the time of eclipses and the Olympic Games. It's as if Silicon Valley was in ancient Greece and the best minds united to create a revolutionary startup. The Antikythera mechanism showed that people in the distant past had excellent knowledge of astronomy and technologies for studying the starry sky. Considering that time, it was not just a machine, but a supercomputer. People entered data into it and got the result after the complex calculations it performed. In 2016, scientists found an inscription on the device containing more than 3,000 symbols. It was something like a manual for use. The text had information about eclipse colors, celestial body movement, and astrological predictions. It was like a reference list of all the events that happened to the planets in the sky. The Greeks realized that all astronomical bodies in the starry sky moved along the same routes. That is, they had orbits close to the plane of motion of our planet around the sun. Ancient astronomers couldn't calculate the path of their movement, so they created the Antikythera mechanism. This was one of its main functions. The researchers found confirmation of this version in the words of the Roman lawyer Cicero. In one of his quotes, there was a mention of a computing machine created by mathematician Archimedes. According to Cicero, the machine could depict the movement of 5 stars called wanderers. At that time, people called celestial bodies that way. Archimedes had lived before the Antikythera mechanism was invented, but perhaps he created the drawings that became the basis of the device. The mechanism worked, and when you turned the handle on it, it rotated the gears in the front and rear parts of the device. And then, the dial showed you the direction of movement of space objects. Besides, the machine had an astronomical calendar inside and tracked the time of sporting events, such as the Olympic Games, and also helped to calculate the exact time of the eclipse. Apparently, the Antikythera mechanism was something like a powerful organizer used by scientists or wealthy citizens of Greece. But what is most unusual is that its creator probably installed the function that changed the observation properties depending on the observer's location. This means that ancient astronomers had to enter different coordinates in different areas for the correct result. NASA computers can do all these things today. These expensive multi-million-dollar devices work with electricity, chips, processors, and thousands of other things. And the ancient Greeks achieved the same result 2,000 years ago with the help of this small device. This changes the idea of the technologies of ancient Greece. People of that time had plumbing and used steam to control some equipment. They were developed, but no one expected them to go so far. Archaeologists were sure that people of ancient times used giant rough gears to operate windmills. And now, it turns out that they could create small and complex mechanisms that modern scientists couldn't figure out for 100 years. Divers continue to study the seabed where the Antikythera mechanism was found. They have already found other items, such as nails from the ship and a bronze ring. Such underwater excavations are dangerous and complicated, so the research takes a long time. Experts think that the Antikythera mechanism was not a single copy. Perhaps the ancient Greeks made the same or similar machines. Maybe they're hidden somewhere or were melted down to create something else. In those days, bronze was a costly metal, so when ancient astronomical computers broke down, people could melt them and sell the metal. Some researchers refer to the Antikythera mechanism as the ancient prototype of all modern devices. Phones, computers, and tablets have something in common with this machine. By the way, have you heard of the odometer device? This device tracks the distance traveled by car or other means of transport. Nowadays, odometers are digital, but this technology used to be mechanical, and the ancient Greeks were the first to invent it. According to some records, Archimedes might have created it. The Roman later adopted this device for use during long journeys to aid in road construction. The ancient Greeks were the first to attempt to understand the rules of geometry. The Babylonians and Egyptians used geometry in different spheres of life. However, the Greeks decided to use logical reasoning to establish the rules and formulas that we still use today. Archimedes observed that when a solid object was immersed in water, it displaced a mass of water equal to the volume of the object. Have you heard of the Hippocratic Oath? This document is read aloud by all doctors before they start practicing medicine. For us, concepts such as confidentiality between a doctor and a patient seem commonplace, as well as a doctor's duty to always try to cure and save people's lives. But all of this was invented by ancient Greek Hippocrates. In addition to the famous oath, he was one of the first to make a scientific leap in medicine. In ancient times, people viewed illnesses as punishment for bad deeds. But Hippocrates discovered that diseases were natural and that the human body could react differently to them. This may seem obvious now, but the ancient Greeks reached this conclusion in 460 BCE. Aristotle was the first to suggest that our planet is a sphere, and thanks to him, we enjoy movies, TV series, and performances. The ancient Greeks invented theater in the form we know it today. Aristotle wrote the first rules of drama in history, which guide directors and screenwriters on how to keep the viewer's attention. Greek writers created plays in various genres, including tragedies, satires, and comedies. All of this contributed to the formation of Western culture, and that's why many directors enjoy staging ancient plays. And this is only a small part of what the Greeks invented. Therefore, it's quite logical that they were able to create the Antikythera mechanism. Archaeologists were looking for the long-lost tomb of Cleopatra when they found something that seemed too good to be real. Roughly 43 feet underground beneath a ruined Egyptian temple, there was a perfectly straight tunnel, carved through solid sandstone. The tunnel is over 4,200 feet long, and so precise that experts called it a geometric miracle. The tunnel sits beneath an ancient city west of Alexandria, near Egypt's Mediterranean coast. The team that found it carefully peeled back layers of stone and debris until they hit this passage, about 6.5 feet tall, cut cleanly into bedrock. There were no collapse marks or wandering curves, just precision. If you've ever tried to drill a straight hole into a wall at home and failed within seconds, imagine doing this underground for nearly a mile. Ancient builders had no GPS, no lasers, no modern surveying tools. Yet, this tunnel stays remarkably level over its entire length. That means they understood gradients, angles, and distance in a way that goes far beyond stack stones and hope. Engineers today rely on machines to maintain that kind of accuracy underground. These people relied on knowledge, repetition, and patience. Parts of the tunnel now sit underwater or collapsed, probably after several earthquakes that struck the region centuries ago. Some experts think the tunnel may have once connected the temple to water sources or ritual areas closer to the sea. Archaeologists noticed that the Egyptian tunnel is an exact replica of the Eupalinos tunnel in Greece. It's believed to be one of the most important engineering achievements of antiquity, which only makes the Egyptian tunnel more special. Underground passages in ancient Greece linked temples to sacred springs. Back in ancient times, people moved through space in specific ways, underground and above, to reenact myths and journeys of gods. A tunnel like this could represent a path to the underworld, rebirth, or divine transition. Nobody would invest this much effort in construction just for decoration. Plus, in earlier digs at the site, archaeologists pulled up all kinds of artifacts, including coins with the names and faces of Cleopatra VII and Alexander the Great. They also found figurines, statues of deities, a mummy with a gold tongue, and even an entire cemetery packed with Greco-Roman style mummies. The perfect geometric tunnel isn't an isolated flex. Not far away, underwater archaeologists off the coast of Alexandria uncovered something that sounds like it belongs in a royal travel documentary. A 2,000-year-old pleasure boat that once glided along the Nile. And this wasn't just another fishing vessel or cargo barge. It likely stretched over 115 feet long and 23 feet wide, and had a decorated cabin, plus around 20 rowers, which turned the river into a moving palace. This isn't speculation pulled out of thin air. An ancient Greek geographer named Strabo wrote about these exact boats around the 1st century BCE. He described lavish vessels used by royalty during festivals and ceremonial outings in Alexandria. For years, historians treated that as a poetic exaggeration. Then, this wreck surfaced, and suddenly, Strabo sounded less like a storyteller and more like a witness. Even ancient art backs it up. The Palestrina mosaic from Italy shows richly decorated boats floating down the Nile. They match both the texts and the physical evidence almost perfectly. Inside the wreck, archaeologists found something small but incredibly human. Graffiti scratched into the wood in Greek. Just writing left behind by someone who stood on that deck 2,000 years ago. Researchers haven't fully decoded the text yet, but its existence alone matters. It tells us this wasn't just a floating symbol of power. People lived on it. It was sort of like a modern luxurious yacht, and the Nile was like a highway. All types of vessels with passengers were moving back and forth, visiting friends, carrying their goods for trade, doing business, and, of course, going on pleasure cruises. The location of the pleasure boat makes the story even better. The boat sat near the temple of Isis on Antirodos, an island that once hosted royal and religious buildings before earthquakes and rising seas erased it from the surface. That temple collapsed around 50 CE, and researchers believe the boat may have sunk during the same disaster. Another recent find that has to do with life on the Nile is the lower part of the massive worship complex about 10 miles southwest of Cairo. It connects directly to an upper temple dedicated to Ra, the Egyptian deity of the sun. The newly excavated part is a 4,500-year-old valley temple. The upper temple sits on higher ground, and archaeologists excavated it years ago. The valley temple is closer to the Nile, and it's connected to the upper part by a causeway. A German Egyptologist actually started excavating part of the temple back in 1901, but the groundwater sat much higher then, and he had to stop. Now, the groundwater level is lower, and a modern team has managed to excavate about half of the valley temple since 2024. Once they got in, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a columned entrance portico. Then they found blocks carved with a calendar of religious events, almost like an ancient public schedule. The text includes feasts for Sokar, a falcon-headed deity linked to Memphis, which was a major capital during the Old Kingdom, plus the festival of Min, a fertility deity, and even the procession of Ra. The calendar blocks all showed up around the entrance portico area, which most definitely means that the outside facade of the temple displayed this long feast calendar publicly. That's why archaeologists think this might be one of the earliest examples of a true public calendar ever found. A literal event list for an entire community, built into the architecture. On top of that, the team found dozens of decorated blocks covered in inscriptions that named a pharaoh who ruled around 2420 to 2389 BCE and had the temple built. This temple shows how people moved through ancient Egypt. Because the upper temple handled the main worship, but the valley temple made the whole place accessible. It acted like the landing area for boats coming in, either directly from the Nile or more likely from one of its side channels. So instead of hiking across desert terrain, visitors could arrive by water, step onto the temple's landing stage, enter through the valley temple, then head up the causeway ramp toward the upper temple on the hill. After about a century of use, researchers found that the valley temple had been repurposed into a residential area. And the best part is, what they found from that era: 2 wooden pieces used for playing Senet, an ancient board game. Senet shows up at other Egyptian sites too, including King Tutankhamun's tomb, but nobody fully agrees on the rules today. Some discoveries in Egypt create new mysteries instead of solving the old ones. Earlier in 2025, archaeologists announced the discovery of the first pharaoh's burial found in or near the Valley of Kings since King Tut's tomb in 1922. The newly found tomb of Thutmose II flooded almost immediately after burial. Ancient officials rushed in, removed the mummy and most of the grave goods, and hid them somewhere else. The weirdest part is that an alabaster ointment jar inside the tomb links the burial directly to Hatshepsut, Thutmose II's wife and half-sister. The inscription basically says she made this monument for him, which proves she arranged his burial. But it still doesn't explain why she placed him here and later chose the Valley of the Kings for herself. Now, archaeologists are studying a huge mound of rubble near the tomb, about 75 feet tall, and suspect it was built to hide something important. If a second tomb sits underneath, it could be complete and undisturbed. So, the deeper the archaeologists dig, the more ancient Egypt stops feeling like a gone civilization and starts feeling like a paused one. Looks like it didn't just survive time, it outsmarted it. And we're only just beginning to catch up. Nearly 140 years ago, some fishermen pulled pieces of a ship from Lake Michigan. But where was the rest of it? From that moment on, hunters spent years searching for the ghost ship. By the 1970s, the hunt reached a new level. One with a $1,000 reward offered to anyone who could find it. Still, nothing. It was as if the vessel had simply vanished into thin air. That is, until now. Researchers have finally found the shipwreck off the coast of Bailey's Harbor, Wisconsin. The ship called the F.J. King disappeared back in 1886. At that time, this 140-foot-long vessel had a very important job: transporting grain. Now you might think, grain? Really? That's it? Okay, sure, it's not like the ship was loaded with tons of gold or jewels. But we have to see the bigger picture. At that time, Wisconsin was known as America's breadbasket. The state produced huge amounts of food, especially wheat. In fact, about 1/6 of the nation's wheat was being harvested there. Farming was booming, and that of course meant big money. The F.J. King was part of that golden era.
For about 19 years, it successfully carried and traded grain and iron ore through the Welland Canal. That is, until September 15, 1886. That day, the crew were on their journey to carry iron ore from Michigan to Chicago. It was supposed to be just another routine trip, but they were caught in a powerful storm. The conditions were brutal, with waves nearly 10 feet high. The crew fought desperately to get the water out and keep the ship afloat, but the waves were too strong. They kept coming, one after another. The men worked hard until they couldn't go on anymore. The waves were splitting the ship's seams. At this point, a catastrophe was inevitable. So Captain William Griffin gave the order, "Abandon ship." They had no choice but to get out. The men grabbed their belongings as fast as they could and climbed into the ship's small yawl boat. It was 2 in the morning. Everything around them was dark. As they tried to get closer to shore, the F.J. King went down, bow first. And then suddenly, boom! The crew watched in shock as the ship's stern deckhouse blew off, sending the captain's papers 50 feet into the air. They stayed in the small boat until they were picked up by a passing schooner called La Petite. The crew took them to Bailey's Harbor, and moments later, Captain Griffin filed a wreck report. That's when the real mystery began. In his report, the captain said the ship had gone down about 5 miles off the shore of Lake Michigan. But that was just what he thought. I mean, it wasn't based on any instruments, readings, or anything like that. It was just what he remembered from that night. A week later, though, a local lighthouse keeper spotted the masts of a schooner sticking out of the water, much closer to shore. He reported it to a nearby newspaper, and that's when people really started asking questions. Could that be the F.J. King? Even though they had a solid lead, it didn't take them anywhere. No one could find the boat. Days passed, then months, then years, until 2025. That's when an investigator named Brendan Baylod decided enough was enough. He gathered a team of about 20 scientists and historians to finally track down this historic shipwreck. They dug through hundreds of original documents about the ship and the day it went down, piecing together clues and narrowing down the area where it might be. Many experts were like, "Man, just let it go." And to be fair, they had every reason to feel discouraged. After all, that whole area had already been searched over and over. There was just no way the ship could still be out there. But Bayod didn't give up. Okay, truth is, he also thought it was a long shot. But working to find the ghost ship had other perks. His team wanted to get some hands-on experience with a brand new super advanced sonar. With that in mind, they set out on their mission, heading to Lake Michigan on June 28th. Okay, great. But where do you even start? First, Bayod had to clear something up. Back when the wreck happened, who was actually telling the truth about the ship's location? The captain or the lighthouse keeper? Getting that answer would point them in the right direction. Then, Bayod thought about something that might have already crossed your mind. How could the captain really know where they were? It was pitch black. He'd just been struggling to keep his ship afloat. He couldn't see much. He was exhausted and probably hungry. He definitely wasn't thinking straight. That's when the investigator realized the lighthouse keeper's directions were probably more accurate. Thankfully, he found the newspaper article from 1886. You know, the one I mentioned earlier, where the lighthouse keeper gave a more specific detail about where he'd last seen the ship's masts. What the investigator did next was draw a 2-square-mile grid around that location, and the team decided to map the lake bottom inside that grid, using their fancy tech. So, there they were, aboard the Shoreline, a tour boat that usually carries sightseers along the peninsula. But that day, they didn't really expect to find anything. Their only goal that afternoon was to test their new side-scan sonar, one with much greater capability than the previous model the crew had been using. But then, after about 2 hours of searching, something strange happened. The sonar was sending out sound waves to map the dark floor of Lake Michigan when it started to act a little differently. And as the images began to stitch together, they revealed a shape that was impossible to mistake. A ship. Bingo. They'd found it. Turns out the wreck was less than half a mile from where the lighthouse keeper had said it would be. At this point, some of the crew had to pinch each other. They couldn't believe their eyes. They were shocked, not only because they'd found the ship so quickly, but also because of how well it was preserved. You see, the investigators were hopeful, but they also thought the ship would be shattered into pieces. After all, it had been carrying iron ore, and the weight of all that metal could have torn it apart even more. But no. To everyone's surprise, the hull was almost completely intact. Sure, the front right side was crushed, but the rest of it was pretty much there. The investigators even found the crew's belongings and kitchenware scattered across the lake bottom. Once they got over the shock, they called in archaeologists to examine the site and create a 3-dimensional model of the wreck. This is the 5th major shipwreck Bayod and his team have found in the last 3 years, but the truth is, this region is full of mysteries still waiting to be uncovered. The F.J. King is just one of around 6,000 ships that were damaged or destroyed in incidents across the Great Lakes during the 1800s. And it's estimated that hundreds of these wrecks still remain hidden at the bottom of Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. Thankfully, discoveries like this one could become more and more common. In fact, more shipwrecks are being found today than at any other time in history. Advances in technology have made scanning the lake floor less expensive and more accessible, not just for professionals, but for amateurs too. And the profile of these modern-day shipwreck hunters has changed. Now, they're more often searching for wrecks for their historical value, not just to find treasure. Another project that could help uncover even more wrecks in the Great Lakes is called Lakebed 2030. It could change everything, as its goal is to map the entire lake floor. And right now, only about 15% has been explored. That means the Great Lakes might still be hiding their biggest secrets, and that, at the very least, is super exciting.
Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look. And what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic: explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect: a dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all. Okay, are you ready for an epic fight between two prehistoric predators? Well, hang on. Look at this creature. You know it. An ancient shark about 65 feet long that used to swim through the dark waters of the world's oceans and was so terrifying it had no enemies. Well, almost. Scientists have recently discovered the remains of another ancient predatory fish off the coast of Australia, a fish that lived around the same time as Megalodon. It was small, about the size of a dolphin, but it could pose a danger to the infamous shark. How is it possible if this creature was many times smaller? Well, let's take a look. This monster is called Janjucetus, and technically it wasn't exactly a fish. It was a distant relative of the modern baleen whale. Outwardly, it may seem quite cute, similar to that baleen whale I mentioned, but you wouldn't want to meet it in the ocean. It had the massive skull of a whale, large eyes the size of tennis balls, and a short snout with an immensely powerful jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. In other words, it was like a shark version of the baleen whale. Janjucetus lived during an ancient period called the Oligocene, which was about 33 to 23 million years ago. At that time, there was an incredible abundance of life in the world's waters. Giant penguins, small whales, sharks 2 to 3 times larger than modern ones, primitive dolphin species, and many other unusual creatures. Now imagine that in this ancient and terrifying neighborhood, a giant megalodon met a Janjucetus. At first sight, it's not love. The megalodon's victory is obvious, but don't rush to write the Janjucetus off. It's agile and fast. It's quite possible that it was more mobile than Megalodon, and during the fight, it would have avoided a direct attack. The Megalodon would have lost sight of such a small opponent, while the Janjucetus would have swum up to the shark's belly and opened its jaws. They're small, but there are a lot of sharp teeth. Now, these teeth were designed to rip and cut. The Janjucetus would attack the Megalodon with a small but very unpleasant bite, and the shark would have swum away after such a punch. But who knows? Maybe Megalodon would have immediately eaten Janjucetus in the first seconds of the fight. Megalodon could have won, but in terms of speed and mobility, it would have lost. So let's look at something bigger, something that could actually have competed with Megalodon. It doesn't have to be a monster living at the same time as the ancient shark. We can make our own rules. Imagine that all ancient marine creatures ended up in the same pool with Megalodon. So its next opponent is the Liopleurodon. Now initially scientists thought that this monster could grow to be 82 feet long, which is even larger than Megalodon. But more accurate studies have shown that it only reached 32 feet, which is about the size of a modern orca. The Liopleurodon lived in the waters of Western Europe around 160 to 155 million years ago and shared territory with other dangerous reptiles such as ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. Yes, it was smaller than them, but it had one big advantage. The Liopleurodon possessed one of the largest jaws in the animal kingdom, which accounted for about 20% of the total length of its entire body. That's a mouth. Its jaws were about 6.5 feet long. A huge, toothy mouth the size of an adult basketball player filled with smooth and dagger-sharp teeth, ideal for cutting steaks and peeling ammonite shells. And by the way, scientists suspect that ammonites and squid were the creature's main diet. This super predator was also a very fast and agile creature that ambushed and attacked its prey from below. Megalodon would have been in big trouble. The grip strength of a Liopleurodon would surely be more powerful than that of Megalodon. Besides, the Liopleurodon's size and mobility would allow it to attack the enemy from different sides. It's probably why Megalodon would have lost in that fight. The next opponent for our Megalodon is the Dunkleosteus, and to be honest, this guy has almost no chance of defeating the large ancient shark. But the Megalodon probably wouldn't have beaten it either. The Dunkleosteus was one of the earliest predators of the ocean. It lived in the late Devonian, about 382 to 358 million years ago. Its size was about 13 to 32 feet or even less. And it also had no teeth. What? A predator without teeth? How did it survive in a dangerous prehistoric world? Well, it grabbed and chewed food with the help of special jaw growths. Those growths were so powerful that they could pierce steel, if there was any around. In a sense, these were not teeth, but bones. Okay, let's say the Megalodon grabbed this predator by the belly and it couldn't do anything with its growths. But the problem is that the megalodon would have hardly done anything either, because the Dunkleosteus was a heavily armored fish. Just look at this shell. It probably limited its mobility, but it provided incredible protection. This monster felt like a big stone in the teeth of the megalodon. It's unlikely that the megalodon would have wanted to chew this stone. It would have spit it out, and both predators would have gone about their business. We've got a draw here. And now, the final match. Here's the next opponent. You see anything? Is this enemy invisible? What's happening? Ah, there it is. Meet the telemonstrum. It's a tiny ancient monster just 11 inches long. Huh? What can it do to a giant shark? Next to the megalodon, the telemonstrum is like a box of matches compared to a human. But if the megalodon had had a developed brain, like people do, it would have been very scared of this creature and would have immediately swum away. Many people scream and run away in fear when they see a creepy insect crawling or flying, or when a mouse runs across the floor. Some of us jump on the couch in horror. Not all of us, but some. The megalodon would have jumped out of the water like a dolphin if the telemonstrum had charged at it. Just check it out. It looks like an underwater bike with a long trunk with a jaw at the end. And these handlebars, where you would put your hands to control your bike, are the eyes. It's like the eyes of a hammerhead fish, only thinner and longer. The body of a squid, cuttlefish fins, snail eyes, and a toothed proboscis. This is a horror movie character. Scientists say it probably hunted jellyfish, small fish, and shrimp. And it didn't chew the food, it licked it like ice cream. Obviously, it's not an opponent for the megalodon, but it's still a creepy monster. Well, what would have happened had it really started a fight with the megalodon? It would have been difficult for the ancient shark to find it. It would have been unlikely to catch this tiny monster in the mouth, and the telemonstrum wouldn't have been able to do anything to the megalodon either. However, I can think of one strategy. The creepy creature had a long trunk. What if it had just swum under the megalodon's fin and started licking it? If the shark had felt the tickles, then it would probably have worked. But most likely, they wouldn't have fought each other. It seems like they would have made perfect friends. The telemonstrum lived about 300 million years ago in shallow seas and estuaries that covered the territory of the U.S. When scientists discovered this creature in 1955, they were shocked because no one had any idea what it was. Experts compared it to worms, tunicates, conodonts, mollusks, and vertebrates. And do you know who it really was? Well, scientists still have no idea. They can't determine its place on the tree of evolution. Perhaps this is some new branch, and its descendants simply haven't survived to this day. The megalodon was one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. But now we know that other equally scary monsters lived in the oceans. But what if the megalodon lived today? Who could have defeated him? A blue whale who would be even bigger than this ancient shark. But the blue whale seems to be a kind animal. It wouldn't fight. How about the kraken? The kraken versus the megalodon? Well, let's save this fight for another video.
75 million years ago, North America was full of scary dinos, both walking and flying, and insects the size of birds. But the biggest predator there was something way scarier, a crocodile so massive it could swallow dinosaurs whole. This beast was roughly the length of a school bus, weighed more than 5 tons, and had teeth the size of bananas. Its name was Deinosuchus, which literally means terrible crocodile. And trust me, it lived up to that name. Scientists have found its fossils all across North America, from Mexico to Texas to New Jersey and Montana. It means this monster could live pretty much anywhere it wanted. It wasn't picky. It roamed rivers, swamps, and even coastlines. And when it was hungry, anything that moved was fair game. Fossilized dinosaur bones show massive bite marks matching its jaw pattern. So yes, it actually took down dinosaurs. What's even crazier is its bite force. Based on skull reconstructions, scientists estimate it could crush bones with more power than T-Rex. So if a T-Rex ever got close to the water, it might have ended up as lunch. But Deinosuchus wasn't just a bigger and meaner version of today's crocodiles. it was more closely related to alligators. Recent studies show that it actually belonged to an ancient branch of crocodilians that split off before the ancestors of modern alligators and crocodiles.
It was like that weird cousin in your family tree who doesn't quite fit in, but somehow looks like everyone. It had traits from both groups, like salt glands that helped it survive in both freshwater and saltwater. That's rare because most crocs today can't handle salty environments for long. This feature might have been its secret superpower. Around that time, North America was divided by a massive inland sea called the Western Interior Seaway. It stretched from the Arctic Ocean down to the Gulf of Mexico. Deinosuchus could travel across it, sneaking along the coasts and striking anywhere there was food. Still, scientists argue about its favorite hangout spot. Some say it mostly lived in rivers and swamps, and the fossils found near the coast just happened to be preserved better there. Others think it really did patrol the ancient shoreline, waiting for dinosaurs that wandered too close. Either way, this reptile ruled its world, and the climate of its time helped it thrive. The late Cretaceous was a warm, humid idyll filled with wetlands, forests, and endless food sources. Giant turtles, fish the size of cars, and whole herds of herbivorous dinosaurs gave Deinosuchus an all-you-can-eat buffet. As long as the ecosystem stayed stable, it could keep getting bigger and bigger, and it did. Throughout Earth's history, huge crocodiles have evolved again and again. It's like nature's favorite blueprint for apex predator. Even today, Nile crocs and saltwater crocs are living proof that this ancient design still works perfectly. Some scientists even joke that crocodiles are basically dinosaurs that decided to chill and wait it out. They survived mass extinctions while most other big reptiles vanished. Deinosuchus wasn't so lucky and went extinct around 73 million years ago, most likely because the environment changed and its food sources dwindled. But the ocean is still full of mysteries. Maybe some gigantic croc-like beasts are still lurking out there. And while we're guessing, let's look at some other prehistoric creatures that make scientists rewrite what they thought we knew about life on Earth. First up, we have the Dragon of Death. Don't even make me pronounce its full name, Thanatos draconamaru. Scientists found its bones in western Argentina, in formation layers called the Plautier Formation, from about 86 million years ago, the late Cretaceous. This creature wasn't just big, it was gigantic for a flying reptile. Judging by some of its bones, it has a wingspan somewhere between 23 and 30 feet. That's like a small plane wing outstretched. It's officially one of the largest pterosaurs ever discovered in South America. Its fossils are pretty well preserved, including parts that are usually squishy and fragile in flying reptiles like vertebrae and limb bones. This gives scientists clues not just about how it moved, but about what ecosystems were like back then. Looks like it enjoyed marshy floodplains, big open skies, and plenty of prey below. Our dragon likely used its size to its advantage, either going after small dinosaurs or scavenging. The fact that this massive creature managed to evolve wings capable of flight is just crazy. Next, we've got a creature that looks like a mix of a dino and a skunk to me, Stegosaurus elengasen. Scientists found fossils of this cool guy in southern Chile among rocks deposited about 75 million years ago. The thing that hits you first, let's hope, not literally, is its tail. Instead of the usual spikes or clubs you get in other armored dinos like ankylosaurs, Stegosaurus had a flat blade-like tail made from fused bones. It looked almost like a weird paddle or frond. Scientists compare it to Aztec ammunition because of that blade structure across the tail's rear half. It wasn't huge, only about 6.5 feet long, but what it lacked in size, it made up for in weirdness and cleverness. Its body had armor plates, protective skin scutes, and a skull structure showing features of different dinos. So it was kind of a hybrid in style, which got paleontologists rewriting some of the family trees of armored dinosaurs. Also, the fossil is unusually complete. about 80%, which is rare because armor bones are often damaged or missing. This is super useful for science because it shows us how armor evolved, especially in southern continents. And you definitely need to meet our next hero, a truly bizarre marine reptile that once patrolled the waters of what's now Wyoming, Serpentisuchops fisteri. This creature was part crocodile, part sea monster, and 100% nightmare fuel. Scientists first found its fossils over 25 years ago, but they only recently managed to piece together enough of its remains to truly understand it. It had a super long neck, which was normal for plesiosaurs, and a croc-like skull and body. Most fossil books would tell you these traits shouldn't exist in the same animal. So this guy was a stunning exception. Paleontologists have found its lower jaw, a large portion of its skull, neck vertebrae, tail, and ribs. So they were able to reconstruct not just what it looked like, but how it likely moved, swam, and hunted. About 35% of its body is preserved, which is not so often for marine reptiles, and it lets scientists learn a lot about its lifestyle. With its long neck and the power of a crocodile, plus a super combo of speed, reach, and bite, this guy was most likely a top predator of its time. Last but not least, we have this cool dino, Duonicus tsoktbatari, that lived in Mongolia's Gobi Desert around 90 to 95 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. It wasn't a meat-eater like T-Rex, but more of a plant muncher. It grew to about 10 feet long, roughly the size of a tall adult human lying down, and weighed around 575 pounds. Pretty hefty for a leaf-eater. The craziest thing about this heavy guy was its hands. It only had 2 fingers on each hand, and each finger carried a giant curved claw about a foot long, covered in keratin, the same stuff your nails are made of. That keratin actually added over 40% to the claw's length, which is super rare to see preserved in fossils. Because of that, scientists can actually study the full shape and structure of the claw, not just the bone. Its hands weren't just for show, though. We can see fused wrist bones and stiff joints in the fossil, which means it could grab and pull down branches to eat leaves. So, having fewer fingers could actually be a bonus if your goal is to reach and rip down vegetation. It's a really cool example of how dinosaurs adapted in weird and specific ways to survive.
Waves are crashing higher than ever before, about to swallow one of the world's most mysterious islands. By 2080, rising seas could crash all the way up to Ahu Tongariki. It's the famous ceremonial platform on Rapa Nui, aka Easter Island. Unfortunately, that's not just a guess. Researchers at the University of Hawaii at Manoa have already run the numbers and shared their findings in the Journal of Cultural Heritage. Their study shows that up to 51 other cultural landmarks, including the iconic Moai statues, could face flooding. But before we get to all that drama, let's learn more about Rapa Nui itself. This is the original name of Easter Island. People from Polynesia settled there way back, around 300 CE. Once they made themselves comfortable, they started creating their own wild and creative culture. Between the 10th and 16th centuries, they built massive ceremonial platforms called ahu and huge statues called moai, made to honor ancestors. Those giant figures still stand today, giving the island a mysterious vibe. Rapa Nui National Park protects all this. It's a Chilean wildlife area, the heart of Rapa Nui culture. The architecture and sculptures here are totally unique, even compared to other Polynesian islands. Easter Island is super remote, literally the farthest inhabited island in the world, sitting 2,300 miles from mainland Chile. The island covers 64 square miles, and the World Heritage Site takes up about 27 square miles, including 4 tiny nearby islets. Rapa Nui National Park is full of archaeological treasures. Experts estimate there are about 900 moai, more than 300 ahu, and thousands of other structures for farming, funerals, houses, and daily life. The moai are incredible. Some stand 6.5 feet tall. others reach almost 66 feet. Most were carved from yellow-brown lava using simple basalt tools called toki. Some moai were still being carved. Some were being moved to their final ahu, and some were torn down and re-erected. The quarries like Rano Raraku show us today how the carvings were made. The ahu come in all shapes and sizes. The biggest is Ahu Tongariki, with 15 moai lined up on top of it. Most ahu have a raised platform of carefully worked stones, a ramp, often paved with smooth beach pebbles, and a flat area in front. Rock art is everywhere. You can find pictographs and petroglyphs in all kinds of styles. Caves hide even more carvings. Even villages, farms, and other structures are super interesting. By the 16th century, according to studies, the Rapa Nui society faced a big crisis. Natural resources ran low. The culture started to change. Many of the megalithic monuments were ruined. The ancestor cult was replaced by the man-bird cult. It was centered in Orongo by the Ranokau volcano. There are 54 semi-underground stone houses there, all shaped like ellipses and decorated with carvings about birds and fertility. This cult lasted until the mid-19th century. It's probably no wonder that colonization brought huge changes. Livestock, forced relocation, and diseases cut the native population to barely over 100 people. Today, the island is home to descendants of the original Rapa Nui people as well as immigrants. They try to keep the culture and still live in the modern world. Sadly, all that heritage might be lost soon, for good. And if nothing is done, rising seas could put Rapa Nui's UNESCO World Heritage status at risk. Scientists say that knowing these risks are just the first step. If we actually realize what's happening, we can figure out how to protect ancient monuments. The team wanted to see just how bad rising seas could get for Rapa Nui. So, they built a digital twin of the island and ran insanely detailed computer models to track waves along the shore. Then, they stacked those flood maps on top of data about all the cultural landmarks which they got thanks to local partners. They wanted to see which ones would get hit first. The results were pretty intense. Sea level rise is threatening coastlines everywhere, but the question now is when and how bad. The researchers' timeline shows that waves could crash all the way to Ahu Tongariki by 2080. That's the famous platform with the moai statues, the heart of the island's culture. The data is clear and the clock is ticking. The island's people need to start planning now before the sea starts taking what's theirs. And Easter Island isn't the only potential disaster site suffering from the elements. The old city of Chanchan in Peru is feeling the heat from extreme weather. It used to be the capital of the Chimu Empire and is basically the biggest pre-Columbian city made out of earth in the Americas. The place was super advanced for its time. They had smart city planning, organized society, irrigation systems, and some amazing art. The Incas took over in the 1400s, but the ruins still show how sophisticated the Chimu were. It's now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's really important. And now, El Niño. The warm phase of a natural climate cycle called El Niño Southern Oscillation brings both heavy rains and long droughts to this place. These ups and downs have happened forever, but now they occur more often. Besides, rising groundwater is making the buildings unstable. To fight this, people are controlling the water table, fixing walls, documenting the architecture, training locals, raising awareness, and making disaster plans. Storms and shrinking sea areas are also causing problems for the 19th century whalers settlement on Herschel Island in Canada. It's so bad that buildings had to be moved inland to stay dry and avoid flooding. If erosion keeps going, locals might have to move them even more, and some structures are likely to be abandoned. Permafrost is also breaking down graves, which makes buried caskets topple and break. If we move to the mosque city of Bagarat in Bangladesh, we'll find that water and salty soil are wrecking stone buildings. salt gets into the rocks and then expands when it gets wet. This causes the stones to crack and crumble faster. And this place is a UNESCO World Heritage Site too. It contains 360 mosques, public buildings, water tanks, mausoleums, bridges, roads, and other public buildings. People once constructed them from baked brick. Another place potentially in danger from rising seas and stronger waves is coastal Great Britain. There, weather conditions are threatening lots of historic castles. Hurst Castle in Hampshire, Tintagel in Cornwall, Peel Castle in Cumbria, Bayard's Cove Fort in Devon, Garrison Walls in the Isle of Scilly, and Kelshot Castle in Southampton all face danger. English Heritage says they need to fix walls and build stronger defenses to stop storm damage. Heavy rains and extreme weather are also hitting Edinburgh in Scotland. Flooding and landslides are a serious growing risk. Since 1970, annual rainfall has gone up 13%. The sandstone repeatedly gets wet and dries, which wears down Edinburgh Castle and erodes the volcanic rock it stands on. Is it going to topple one day? If nothing is done soon, time will show, I guess. Another super famous and touristy place that might get flooded soon is Venice in Italy. Its lagoon faces a serious threat from rising sea levels. Flooding is becoming more and more common. This puts the city's buildings and streets at risk. So, as you see, the problem of Rapa Nui aren't unique. Other coastal places like Hawaii face the same threat from rising seas. Ancient temples, sacred burial grounds, and other irreplaceable cultural sites are at risk, just like the moai and ceremonial platforms of Easter Island. The rising waters don't just threaten buildings, they put the history, traditions, and identity of entire communities in danger. Researchers are using data on coastal flooding to predict what could happen to Rapa Nui and other historical spots. They're mapping the risks, studying how seas will rise, and searching for ways to protect those precious places. The clock is ticking, and without action, some of the most sacred and ancient sites could be lost forever. In 1969, two brothers went fishing on the Altamaha River in the Clark's Bluff area. They cast their fishing rods, ready to wait for some fish to bite their bait, but at that moment, they saw something strange. At first, they thought it was a sturgeon, but then they saw that the length of this sturgeon was about 13 feet, almost as tall as two basketball players. Of course, such a size didn't frighten the brothers because some species of sturgeon can reach a length of 24 feet, which is about 3.5 basketball players. Something else surprised them. The face of this creature resembled that of an alligator. The tail was horizontal. It had a triangular crest along its upper body and sharp metal-colored teeth protruding from its mouth. A creature that looked like a dinosaur was quite an unusual phenomenon for the time when Steven Spielberg was an aspiring young director and didn't even think about creating Jurassic Park. So, on that day in 1969, two brothers saw something elusive, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. They saw a creature that had been the subject of stories for centuries, a creature that is being searched for even today. They met Altamaha. This is a famous and narrow circles monster that lives near the mouth of the Altamaha River in southeastern Georgia. People from the Lower Muskogee Creek tribe talked about it long before the British colonization. In ancient times, there were legends about a snake-like lizard that bellowed and hissed. So this monster has already been elusive for several centuries. But do you know what distinguishes Altamaha from Nessie, Chupacabra, and others? Yes, there are no bad quality photos or videos of Altamaha, but there's a huge amount of evidence from different periods. For the locals, Altamaha is so real that one artist created a detailed statue of this river beast. Of course, it's not accurate because it's based on eyewitness accounts. But you'll probably agree that it would be scary to see such a cute animal in the middle of the river while fishing. Almost all the stories are about a creature without hind limbs, but with front flippers, which swims like a dolphin, has a crocodile face, big eyes and large, sharp teeth. It's gray or green with a whitish-yellow belly and a bony crest on its crown. And most interestingly, people have seen this creature in different sizes. Of course, when you see an unknown dinosaur-like thing, you can exaggerate its size or estimate it incorrectly, which explains the difference in statements. But there's also a probability that Georgia is home to a big family of Altamaha. One of the first people to see this creature and report it to a local newspaper was Captain Delano. On his schooner Eagle, he was sailing near St. Simon's Island, below the mouth of the Altamaha River, when he saw a creature about 70 feet long, which is almost twice the size of a school bus. Its body was like a barrel, and its head was like that of an alligator. It's possible that the captain greatly exaggerated the size of the monster because of the excitement, but several other people who were with him in the boat confirmed his words. From that moment on, reports of the river monster began to appear more often. Someone saw it flashing along the river. Others saw how it behaved defensively towards people. And some people reported that Altamaha was just basking in the sun. Just imagine its displeasure. Not only fishers met Altamaha. In the 20s of the last century, lumberjacks were crossing the river and saw a huge snake-like monster. In 1935, a group of hunters saw a creature they called a giant snake. In the 1940s, Boy Scouts encountered a similar creature. And in the 1950s, 2 employees from Reedsville State Prison saw it. For so many years, people have been meeting it, and no one has ever managed to catch the monster. Perhaps it's smarter than it looks and always very careful. Maybe people are afraid to touch it. Perhaps they consider it a national treasure and protect it. But one day, there was a case when Altamaha almost fell into a trap. In the summer of 1980, 2 men saw a monster wallowing on a muddy shore. It seemed like it was stuck and trying to get out. The witnesses said that the rough, dark-skinned creature had finally left the shore, dived into the water, and disappeared. Later that year, another man said he had seen something similar. A snake-like large creature with 2 brown humps protruding from the water. It dived into the water and churned the surface, like a boat while moving. Other witnesses catching crabs described Altamaha as the largest eel in the world. Okay, stop! Many saw it in the last century, but what about more recent news? Is the monster still alive? Oh yeah. In 2002, a man was pulling a boat upriver near the town of Brunswick when he noticed something large, 20 feet long and about 6.5 feet wide, breaking out of the water. In 2010, a photographer caught something strange on camera floating along a canal in the city of Darien. And these cases are just the ones we know about. Surely, many people have seen this thing but haven't talked about it in newspapers or on the internet. If you don't believe these stories, you can go to Darien, get on a boat, and ride along the river to see this monster with your own eyes. Yes, according to reports, this creature always tries to avoid people. It's very cautious, but all the same, you should not get too close to this water lizard twice the size of a school bus. Go to the Museum of Darien to take a photo of the Altamaha statue. There are also souvenirs with the image of this monster. But let's assume that you or someone else managed not only to take a clear photo of the Altamaha, but also catch it. What is the next course of action? What are you going to tell the world, and how will the world react to it? What will happen to the poor animal, surrounded by millions of flashes from reporters' cameras? Will people make a show out of it or send it to a lab? Fortunately, in 2001, scientists already developed an action plan. This plan was drawn up by Scotland's nature agency, NatureScot, since they had concerns about the Loch Ness Monster. At some point, it became too popular and too many people tried to catch it, so the agency became concerned about saving the life of the famous creature. They showed the Nessie contingency plan that can also be used for any unknown animal that lives in water or on land. According to the plan, if the ancient lizard is captured, scientists should take its DNA sample and just release it back into the wild. Fair enough. The animal will receive the same legal protection as other local wildlife in Scotland. All attempts to catch it will be prohibited. But let's imagine that this is exactly what happens. scientists receive a DNA sample of the Altamahaha, the Loch Ness Monster, or other similar creatures. What could those be? Some ancient descendants of dinosaurs? For example, the plesiosaur looks like a distant relative of these monsters. It's huge and has a long neck and a toothy mouth. What if it managed to survive and reach the Altamaha River? Or it may be a completely new, unknown species that lives in deep freshwater. Some people who saw Altamaha said that it had produced a hissing sound. What if it's some kind of ancient python or anaconda that moved from land to water and grew fins? In any case, it should not be ruled out that it may be some kind of eel or sturgeon. One day, someone saw it, was impressed, and told other people about it with great exaggeration. Everyone believed it and started spreading the story. What do you think?
Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1600 years old, was Tikab Shak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Shak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Shak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ekchua, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Shak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into 3 layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes Tekhab Shak's tomb the first ever discovered at Karakol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Karakol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Karakol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Karakol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Shak's tomb was one of the three major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Karakol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's "keep out, the ceiling might fall on you." Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So, what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Tekhab Shak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Karakol and other Maya cities shows this in action: thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Shak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Karakol is full of secrets: a hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh?
Hey, check this out. Does this pebble look like a face to you? Especially with that red dot in the middle. If yes, you might be staring at the world's first emoji. It was uncovered in Spain and it's 43,000 years old. And that red spot was made by a Neanderthal with a finger. That means this isn't just a dot. It's the oldest fingerprint ever found. But was this really a nose on a grumpy face? And why is that important? Because it hints at something big. A mind seeing shapes, then choosing to add meaning. The palm-sized rock was discovered in a Paleolithic rock shelter tucked away under some light-colored chalky cliffs. It was pretty much a natural overhang where Neanderthals used to hang out. They called it home tens of thousands of years ago. As for the pebble, to me, the dot seems like a random ketchup stain from ages ago. But real archaeologists know better. The knee placement instantly caught their attention. After running tests, they determined that the stain wasn't natural. It seems intentional, not random. Their guess? Someone thousands of years ago may have dipped a fingertip into a mix of ochre pigment and water, then pressed it onto the stone, leaving a tiny prehistoric stamp. To put that theory to the test, they called forensic experts from Spain's national police. At first, the specialists were pretty doubtful. After all, this was the ultimate definition of a cold case. But with multispectral imaging, which lets scientists study surfaces under different wavelengths of light, something amazing popped up: clear fingerprint ridges. The print's rounded form showed it came from the tip of a finger. Comparing it with fingerprint databases, the evidence pointed to one likely candidate: an adult male, not a woman or a child. Finding any fingerprint this old is insanely rare. Pigments usually fade, rocks erode, and time wipes away delicate details like ridges. When it comes to fingerprints, the unique patterns actually form before you're even born. During pregnancy, they never change. You might wonder, could a clever criminal damage their skin to erase their fingerprints and fool the cops? Turns out that's basically impossible. Fingerprints aren't just on the surface. They form deep in the skin, in a layer called the dermis. Even if you burn, cut, or scar the outer layer, the patterns underneath usually stay the same and even heal back. Scars might distort the print a little, but that won't help. Ironically, those scars often become a new kind of fingerprint, unique to the person. With today's forensic tools, even a partial print is enough, not to mention the DNA. Yes, fingerprints are just patterns, but they usually come with sweat, skin cells, or oils that may contain DNA. Here's another cool fact. Koalas also have unique fingerprints just like we do. Under a microscope, even experts sometimes struggle to tell them apart from human prints. Scientists think these ridges help koalas grip branches and pick leaves with precision. The bottom line, fingerprints are basically nature's unhackable signature. It's something humans, Neanderthals, and apparently even koalas have been leaving behind for tens of thousands of years. If it's been a while since your biology classes, here are some clarifications. Neanderthals weren't our direct ancestors, they're more like our long-lost cousins. Colloquially, we call them humans too. But for scientists, Neanderthals and modern humans were different species within the same genus. Kind of like how lions and tigers are both big cats, but they're not the same species. Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis split from a common ancestor hundreds of thousands of years ago. Neanderthals dominated Ice Age Europe. When Homo sapiens arrived around 45,000 years ago, the two met, mixed, and today, most people outside Africa carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Eventually, the balance shifted. Within just a few thousand years, Neanderthals disappeared, while modern humans kept spreading. Scientists think it was a mix of different factors. Shifting climates made food scarce, new neighbors brought competition, and their small, Scattered populations just made survival even tougher. Now, here's why this little fingerprint is such a big deal. For decades, scientists thought Neanderthals were just built for survival. Strong, but simple. Homo sapiens were supposed to be the creative ones. For a long time, scientists thought they were special because they could think in symbols. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors carved patterns into stones, painted animals on cave walls, and wore beads and pigments as decoration. The earliest proof of symbolic art comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa, where humans etched deliberate designs on pieces of red ochre over 70,000 years ago. Those symbols had no survival purpose. Researchers believe they were expressions of ideas, identity, and meaning. That ability to imagine and represent things we couldn't see was thought to be uniquely human. But this one tiny red dot on a stone challenges that idea. See, the stone already looked like a face, and someone all the way back deliberately pressed a red nose right where it should be. That's symbolic thinking. That could mean that Neanderthals weren't just making tools and hunting mammoths. Perhaps they were able to imagine things. And this isn't just the only clue. This fingerprint is part of a growing pattern that shows Neanderthals were way more like us than we ever believed. For example, in Cova Negra, Spain, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal child who had a serious ear condition that made life incredibly hard. However, the little one lived to be around 6 years old. Now, remember, this was the Ice Age. Just managing on your own was challenging. Survival was tough. Food was scarce and danger was everywhere. Yet, someone made sure that the child was looked after, fed, and kept safe. Scientists believe that this shows a trait of compassion, something we once believed only our species was capable of. In Iraq, scientists found a Neanderthal skeleton sprinkled with flower pollen. Sounds random. Maybe not. Some believe it was part of a funeral ritual, like the world's first floral tribute. If that's true, Neanderthals weren't just surviving, they were remembering and honoring life. Neanderthals were apparently quite resourceful. Around 176,000 years ago, they were stacking stalagmites into neat circles in Bruniquel Cave in France. Was this some kind of ritual or just curiosity? Maybe this means that they had the idea of planning and changing their surroundings. Then, around 130,000 years ago, they took eagle talons and turned them into jewelry in Croatia. Yep, early bling. This suggests they were into looking good and possibly showing off a bit socially. There were no sewing machines back then, but Neanderthals had stone scrapers and even bone needles. With those, they crafted animal skin outfits that were perfect for the freezing Ice Age climate. When you step back and consider all of these, that tiny red fingerprint isn't just a mark on stone. If it was meant to represent a nose, it's part of a much bigger story. Neanderthals cared for one another, crafted tools and clothing, created jewelry, painted on cave walls, and built mysterious structures deep in caves. Basically, they were thinking a lot more like us than we used to imagine. And here's the fun part. What if that little red dot wasn't meant to be a nose at all? Maybe it was a joke, a charm, or just a doodle. Heck, it could have been the first face meme scratched onto rock. Whatever it was, unless it really was an accident, it shows imagination. So the next time you send an emoji, remember that Neanderthals had the same idea. Personally, I like that it's a grumpy one, but at the very least, we now have the oldest fingerprint ever discovered. That alone is extraordinary. But add the fact that the print was placed right on a stone that already resembled a face, and suddenly, the questions multiply. Let's hope the researchers discover more about it so we can know for sure. What we do know is that 43,000 years ago, a Neanderthal pressed a finger onto stone and left us with one of the most personal signatures in prehistory.
Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse so tall that you could spot its beam from 30 miles away. A mysterious tower that was the symbol of wealth and engineering genius. Made with stones so giant and heavy that it still makes us gasp. How did they do that? It has survived earthquakes, one after another, until it finally crumbled in the 14th century. Fast forward to today, and archaeologists have just hauled 22 of its colossal blocks off the seafloor. They're putting the tower back together to be once again admired and explored, but not how you might imagine. The Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a lighthouse, it was the lighthouse of ancient civilizations, one of the longest-standing world wonders. Built around 280 BCE, on a tiny island called Pharos, it reached about 330 feet up in the sky. For comparison, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben. Now, keep in mind that this was before cranes, steel beams, or gym enthusiasts, and it becomes awe-inspiring. For sailors, spotting that gleaming tower was like finally seeing your exit sign after hours of driving on the world's most dangerous highway. The lighthouse was a sight for sore eyes because legend says the waters around Pharos were tricky, full of hidden reefs that could smash ships to pieces. Old sources claim it took about 12 years to build, with the price tag being around 800 Athenian talents of silver, which is an ancient unit of weight close to 57 pounds. That means someone had to haul chests holding 23 tons of coins, without a forklift, most likely across the sea. Wow! The lighthouse was so impressive that the word Pharos ended up being used for lighthouses in a bunch of different languages. The structure had a cool three-tier design. It was square at the bottom, octagonal in the middle, and cylindrical on top. On its top, it had a statue, most likely of Zeus or Poseidon. The lighthouse's white limestone exterior was polished with a sun-catching plaster, so it gleamed like a beacon even without fire. At night, things were different. Wood was hard to come by in Egypt, so the fire on top may have been fed with bundles of papyrus roots or even naphtha for a brighter flame. Whatever the fuel, its glow was boosted by a massive polished bronze mirror. Now, bronze mirrors were common back then. It wasn't until the Renaissance, way long after the Pharos had crumbled, that glass-coated mirrors became standard in European lighthouses. During the day, the same mirror could reflect sunlight, and the tower's bright white silhouette, along with the smoke curling up from the fire, would help sailors find their way. Alexandria was one of the biggest ports in the ancient world, filled with merchants, travelers, and messengers, and the lighthouse was its landmark. Now, fun fact, if you're a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, it certainly popped into your mind when reading about the High Tower of Old Town. Some fans speculate that not just the fictional lighthouse, but also the city itself, was directly inspired by Alexandria. And George R.R. Martin's love for ancient wonders doesn't stop there. There's also the Titan of Bravos, and the beloved author confirmed the intentional parallel to the imposing Colossus of Rhodes. For over 1,600 years, the lighthouse stood high against time, storms, wars, and intrigues, just like in the Game of Thrones. But it was finally defeated by nature itself. Sadly, a few major earthquakes during the 14th century brought it down, scattering its massive stones across the seabed. For over 5 centuries, the remains of the lighthouse just sat there under the waves, basically turning into an underwater rock garden. Divers knew about them, but hauling up 60-ton blocks from the sea is a job for a superhero, or a super powerful crane. And, until recently, it was a lot safer to leave them where they were. Alexandria is still, to this day, a busy harbor, and isn't exactly the easiest place for delicate archaeology. In the 1990s, archaeologists started mapping the whole area around Pharos Island. What they found was precision-cut limestone and granite blocks, some still showing carved edges. Over time, more than 100 massive pieces were cataloged, including chunks of columns, statues, and giant building blocks that could only have come from the lighthouse. Finally, in 2025, Egyptian and French teams joined up and brought that super crane along with a team of divers. In a carefully planned operation, they brought up 22 giant slabs from the seabed. There were parts like door lintels, threshold slabs, and a mysterious pylon, speculated to be some kind of monument. Some of those blocks weigh 70 to 80 tons, which is the weight of 20 African elephants. Those giant boulders are on dry land for the first time in over 600 years. But what happens now? Are researchers really about to rebuild the lighthouse like a giant Lego set? Not quite. You can't just stack century-old blocks like that. For starters, no one's 100% sure what the Lighthouse of Alexandria really looked like. Yeah, we've got drawings and clues, most famously, the tiny images stamped into Roman coins from Alexandria. But they're more like an artist's quick sketch, not quite the blueprints for recreating something down to the last detail. And then there's the missing pieces problem. Those recovered stones are just a fraction of the original structure. Over the centuries, much of the lighthouse's material was repurposed. In fact, the spot where the lighthouse used to stand is now home to the citadel of Qaitbay, a fortress built right on its old foundations. The fort is not just a symbol of the past, but also a tourist attraction and a recognizable Alexandrian landmark. So, no, Alexandria isn't about to get its legendary tower back. At least not in that way. Instead, these newly recovered stoneworks are headed for conservation labs to be studied. Specialists will clean, stabilize, and document every carved groove and chisel mark. Later, they're likely to head to a museum. After all, it's part of the national treasure. However, that's not the end of the story. We still have the technology on our side that promises a fully recreated and explorable lighthouse, just like it was all those centuries ago. The entire endeavor is called the Pharos Project, and its mission is to turn those hauled massive stones, lintels, thresholds, base slabs, and even a mystery pylon into a complete walk-through digital twin of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Each piece is getting high-resolution 3D scanning, joining more than 100 fragments already recorded underwater. The goal isn't just a research. The Pharos Project aims to bring back the lighthouse's original look and feel and turn it into a museum. 330-foot-tall structures often have a lot of stairs, and virtual reality is going to be far less painful for my old feet. Museum visitors could walk around its base in augmented reality, while researchers could use the model to test new theories about its structure and function. Hopefully, we'll be able to customize our own atmosphere, dim the lights, and examine the walls just like in a video game. Maybe they'll render pigeons and seagulls to make it even more authentic. We still don't have many details, but the entire thing is being recorded and will be made into a documentary. While we don't have booths to time travel, talented designers can bring the past back to the present. They just need the correct concept art. Sure, nowadays you can recreate almost everything in 3D, but the point here is the authenticity, to put it back together exactly how it was. This is what the Project Pharos wants to achieve. Maybe one day, every ancient world wonder will end up being recreated in a similar way. But there's no reason to stop there. Virtual tourism can save time and money, and while nothing can replace the real experience, visiting authentic locations recreated in virtual reality may be the next best option. Locals are already excited. The citadel of Qaitbay is already drawing people, but now Alexandria is about to get the first digital tourist attraction. Soon anyone with a VR headset can stand on top of this historic wonder, squint while watching the sunset, and finally answer the burning question: is it possible to get exhausted while climbing virtual stairs? And can I customize the soundtrack? Ooh. In 1994, the Sherman family bought a small ranch in the state of Utah, 150 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. A spacious house, beautiful nature, a starry sky. One night, Terry Sherman heard a strange noise coming from the outside. He went out of the house and saw a huge wolf. He had never seen a wolf of this size. Terry chased the animal away and ran after it, but the wolf's tracks were lost. It was as if it had disappeared into thin air. This was just one of the many creepy and strange cases that occurred at Skinwalker Ranch. The land where the farm is located used to be inhabited by the Ute people. In the past, they clashed with the Navajo, who, according to legend, sent skinwalkers on them. According to locals, a skinwalker is an evil witch who can take the form of any animal or human. There are rumors that skinwalkers still wander in this area. Perhaps the Sherman family saw one of them, but it's not that important. The fact is that the appearance of the huge wolf was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the family reported strange flashes of light, mysterious objects in the sky, crop circles, and mysterious voices that seemed to hover overhead. But the worst thing was the damage to livestock. The Sherman family, fortunately, acted contrary to all the cliches of horror movies. In 1996, they sold the cottage to Robert Bigelow, a man who had a lot of money and was interested in buying this particular ranch. But why? Because Robert Bigelow was a fan of strange, unusual phenomena. He founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDSI, and the area where Skinwalker Ranch is located had been the center of attraction for creepy things. Since the 1950s, there have been hundreds of reports of mysterious objects in the sky in this region. And no, those are not your typical round flying saucers. People talked about different bright lights that took the form of doorways or portals. So, Robert Bigelow and his NIDSI reported on glowing figures and animal diseases. But over the years of research, they could not provide any reliable evidence of the existence of something extraordinary. People saw all those strange phenomena, but their equipment didn't catch anything. So it all looked like a big hoax. But in 2016, something interesting happened. Skinwalker Ranch was sold to an anonymous buyer. 4 years later, the new owner did something no one had done before. Now imagine how cool it would be if all the strange phenomena were recorded not on old video cameras with poor quality, but on cool equipment with high-resolution video recording, powerful microphones, thermal imagers, and sensors. And what if you could also watch a live broadcast using this equipment? Well, that's exactly what the new rancher did. His name is Brandon Fugel, a real estate mogul from Utah. He not only bought the ranch, but also signed a contract with the History Channel to create a show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. The point of this project is to apply a scientific approach to unexplained phenomena. To do this, he turned the ranch into a big reality show that's been running for 5 years. The first thing Brandon Fugel stated was that there would be no falsifications, fakes, or computer graphics. No show exploring strange phenomena can compare with this one in terms of realism and authenticity. Fugel uses thermographic imaging systems, plane transponder data receivers, magnetometers, special cameras that detect infrared radiation and convert it to images, and other complicated scientific equipment. He shares all the data with the audience and allows the most devoted fans of the show to monitor 50 cameras with microphones installed throughout the territory live at any moment. For money, of course. Membership in the Skinwalker Ranch Insiders program starts at $8 per month. During the entire existence of the show, more than 10,000 people have signed up. Participants can not only watch the ranch through cameras, but also rotate them and zoom in and out. In addition to cameras and thermal imagers, Fugel launched special lasers into the sky that reflect off any surface. If the sky is clear, the lasers go far up. If there's an object, the lasers reflect off it. In one of the episodes, they used this equipment to detect something flying and invisible. Fugel also said that he had seen strange flying objects with his own eyes. Skinwalker Ranch turned out to be a real twilight zone for him. Now one day, the camera footage showed one of the doors slam shut. Just like that, without any wind. Other terrible phenomena are connected with livestock. Animals often get hurt, and many of them simply don't survive. And there are loads of such strange, unexplained cases. Each episode of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is dedicated to a phenomenon and its exploration. But has expensive equipment helped to unravel any secrets or prove the existence of extraterrestrial or mystical forces? If this had been confirmed, The whole world would probably already know about it. Therefore, at the moment, it's just an interesting show for fans of mysterious phenomena. There's no direct evidence of the existence of anything unusual there. But, at the same time, there's no explanation for many creepy things. The show offers a huge scope for speculation and research. Local folklore, flying objects, strange voices, not unlike mine, and many unexplained phenomenon are all in one place. If all these stories are true, why are they happening exactly in this area? There are a lot of theories, but let's look at a few of the most popular ones. The first and most obvious one. Imagine that you have a popular show that makes you money. People watch it only because it shows mysterious, inexplicable things. But what if there's an explanation? In this case, the popularity of the show will drop and you'll lose money. It's logical, but why would a real estate mogul with a fortune of several $billion deceive people? Besides, if you watch some episodes, you'll see that Fugel is truly passionate about this project. One of the most popular theories is about visitors from other planets. After all, we have glowing flying objects, bright lights in the sky, electrical interferences, and the ability to elude camera lenses. Also, some believe that an unknown object is hidden in the mountain, located next to the ranch. What if it's a spaceship that crashed there millions of years ago and was swallowed by the mountain? It may be emitting bizarre radiation that drives animals crazy and causes hallucinations in humans. A popular, but a rather banal version. Let's move on. The next theory is similar to the previous one, but instead of guests from another planet, it speaks about guests from another dimension. Ooh. Meet the multiverse version. Some unknown creatures from another reality come here, explore this ranch, and leave. This theory explains why some flying objects in the sky look like portals. Those portals may cause malfunctions in electrical appliances. There's one weak point in this theory. Why do these portals appear on the lonely ranch and nowhere else? A strange choice of travel for the residents of other dimensions. Now, the most likely theory belongs to a neuroscientist who claims that all the oddities on the ranch are connected to the geophysical force of the planet. Seismic activity, geomagnetic fields, and shifts in tectonic plates can affect some parts of the human brain responsible for hallucinations. Electromagnetic forces can also affect the stable operation of electrical appliances. So, perhaps all the oddities of this place are the result of increased seismic activity. Glowing lights, giant wolves that leave no footprints, and voices in the air can be a massive hallucination. But if this is true, why doesn't anything similar happen in other places with seismic activity? This idea leads to another theory related to electromagnetic interference. This phenomenon incapacitates batteries, drones, microphones, video cameras, and other equipment. Perhaps it affects the human brain too. But what about those poor affected animals? There are still too many unanswered questions, so stay tuned.